All right, go ahead.
So we didn't have any real reason other than memory. We didn't have any built-in fear because we were so busy being creative and doing things that we didn't worry about things like that. And we were always in a capacity that was either equal to or above our peers. Okay? And so we didn't have any reason to think about those things, to even discuss it. In fact, we didn't discuss it purposely because we didn't want to create or instill in our children inferiority complexes when they weren't necessary. Because you're the captain of your ship. You know, you can enslave my physical body, but you can't enslave my mind. And so as long as you use your capacity, your brain, you don't have to worry about others. If the people hated me, that was their problem. It was not mine. I didn't have a problem because I didn't necessarily hate them. I just weren't going to let them misuse me, that's all. And the way I avoided that was by getting an education and getting into a skillful level where I would be in charge of me. Now you can be, it's people right now that are in slavery because of their inferiority complex, their inability or their lack of, or the choices they made not to get an education. That's the key to the whole thing. You don't have an education, what can you do? Well, I can do most anything. Well, they don't need, industry doesn't need someone who can do most anything. They want to know specifically what can you do. Can you be an enhancement to this corporation? If not, go to the welfare. See, that's why you have people on welfare.
Can you tell us about your friendship and your relationship with John Davis?
Yeah, well, John was he was strictly working with in the radar department, and I was working in the communication department. But we lived in close proximity in Ingleside, and we used to ride together in the carpool together to work. And when I retired, John was still working. And what happened was Navalex gave me some contracts to oversee some work that they were having done on the East Coast. And they were paying me $4,000, and it took a week to do them. I'd go back there and make $4,000 and come back home. I didn't have to maintain an office or anything. And then I got to thinking that I knew of some government contracts that was coming up, and I needed a building, an office, a place to work from, because I was going to bid on it. Well, I bidded on the contract, and before I bid it, though, John and I and Nelson formed a partnership. See, and
you said Nelson?
Yeah, Nelson.
What was his last name?
What was his last name? Richard Nelson.
Oh, Richard Nelson.
Mm-hmm. And but Nelson, he chickened out after a week or two because he was upset because he couldn't get part of the money that I was getting from Navalex. I had this contract before they came in, you see. And then John had retired, and then Nelson retired also. But Nelson felt that they should get part of that money that I was getting from Navalex, and I wasn't going for that. So he got out of the partnership. So that's why it was MD and N, and then Nelson dropped out. We still kept the MD and N.
That's the N control.
And so then we got this contract from the federal government refurbishing these TACAN units And John, we were partners. And then I decided after we did that I would crank him in on the contract money I was getting from Navalex for for the other trips I was taking back east. And then we got a contract from Bart and electrical contract where we installed the communications equipment for Bart on all of the in all the stations. And we got another contract from the Oakland Fire Department to put in the CAD system for the Oakland Fire Department. And incidentally, they still have that system.
What system is it?
The CAD system, computerized system for the Oakland Fire Department. And we were doing great guns then until John got sick one day. And he got so sick, as a matter of fact, I had to take him to Kaiser. Took him to Kaiser, and they ran some tests on him, and they let him go home. And the next day, or 2 days later, they called him back and told him to come back. He was having problems. And they come to find out he had pancreatic cancer. And in 1 year's time, he went like a light.
I remember that.
Yeah.
What year was that? I don't know what time.
That must have been like maybe, like the early 80s?
Yeah, it was actually...
No, actually, it was before that.
No.
Because it was before you moved here when you started in DNN, right?
Yeah, but he didn't get sick until in the 90s. It was 92, 93, somewhere in there.
That's right.
Because he only lasted a year. And he weighed 250 pounds, was 6'4". And when he died, he weighed less than 100 pounds. Yeah. So, and then I tried to get his wife to, I didn't want to let the business go, you see. We were bidding on these contracts, and you had to have a certain amount of money to bid on these contracts, and not to bid on them, but if you got them, you had to have a bond. And we couldn't, I wasn't able to come up with a bond big enough to cover the type of contracts we were bidding on. And that's why I wanted his wife to just remain there in name. She didn't have to do anything. But she said, no, I want out. And so then I had to shut the business down and dispose of everything, pennies on a dollar, because we had created quite a bit of inventory. And so we had to close it down.
Where your mother and your father both passed away in San Francisco.
Yeah, Daddy died in 1959, and Mama died in 1974.
Where are they buried at?
Olivet.
So that same.
Oh, really?
Olivet Cemetery. My brother, Lawrence. Mm-hmm. My grandmother, Henrietta. Mm-hmm. Wait a minute. Henrietta, Lawrence's son, Richard. Did I get this straight? Let's see. Henrietta, Daddy, Richard, Lawrence, then Mama, and Charles, the oldest husband. Mm-hmm. They all are buried at Olivet.
What about so let's see here. So Henrietta was here, and she got buried in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. What about Thomas? What about her husband?
Oh, he died way back in the 30s, I guess.
And that was back in Louisiana.
Yeah.
So did you stay in contact with any of the people on your mom's side of the family, the Westons?
Yeah, my mother she had a sister that was named M, or M, I guess it was. And she had, John, Eli, and Eugene, 3 brothers. Eugene died first. He was killed in an automobile accident. He lived in Chicago.
Eugene?
Yeah, Eugene. And he had a son named Thomas. He and Thomas was in the car together in East St. Louis. In the wintertime, it was raining and snowing, and they ran into a Greyhound bus, and they killed both of them instantly. That was Eugene. Okay. Eli died a year after Daddy died, which was 1960, I guess. Now, he lived in Chicago also.
Right.
And but when he got sick, he had cancer. So he came to live with Mama in San Francisco.
Eli did?
Yeah, and he died.
And he died here in San Francisco?
In San Francisco.
Do you know where he's buried at?
He's buried in the National Cemetery in San Bruno.
That's Eli. Was he in the service?
Oh yeah, he went in service, and he came out. And then he became a car salesman in Chicago. He was selling Chevrolets. Every year he'd come down to Baton Rouge in a new car. We thought he was the richest dude west of the Mississippi. Anyway, so that took care of Eugene and Eli. Now, M, she died in the 30s, I guess.
She died in the 30s.
Yeah.
So she had, her kids were, she married into the White family, right?
Yeah, she did. Yeah. Now, let me finish with these brothers here. And then that was John. John is the one that lived to be 104 years old. Now John had, that was Wilbur, that was Yule, Ollie, and Olivia. He had four kids. And he stayed in Baton Rouge because he was working for Standard Oil. He was one of the few that hung on all those years. And they, after the war with Japan, they came out also. Alvin, Eula's husband, Alvin, came to San Francisco. And then J.C., which married Lucille, he came to San Francisco. And Olivia came. Olive never did come. As a matter of fact, Olive was the one that moved into our house on Easy and Teddy, or is it Gracie in North 24? And she stayed there.
So the house that you had in Louisiana, did they own that house or was it renting it? Were you renting it?
They were renting because what happened when Dad and them left, they sold the house to Randolph, a man by the name of Randolph. And
so when your dad left Louisiana, he sold it to somebody named Randolph.
Yeah.
Sold the house. Okay.
So then Randolph rented the house to Holly. Now, all of those westerns on the Johnny side, the ones I just got through telling you about, Wilbur and
Right.
Olivia and all those are dead. And they all are buried in San Francisco.
Different places or
All of it,
all of it? Really?
all westerns. Now, Eli never had any kids to speak of. Well, I'll tell you like it. And Eugene had one son by the name of Thomas, and they died together.
Do you know around what year that was? When they died?
Well, it was about 55, 56, somewhere in there.
And that was in Chicago?
Yeah. Actually, probably 57 because Leola was the only one who went to the funeral. And Mama didn't go because Daddy was sick. Yeah, so
Back up here. All right. So what did your father? So we were talking a few minutes ago about you not having a sense of inferiority and not wanting to impress that upon your own children, right?
Mm.
So what did your and you at the point of where your kids were born, you'd been to school, you'd already been traveling around the world, so it was probably easy for them to digest that coming from you. You're telling them that you're in San Francisco and stuff. How did your father put that in you? Because he was a farmer and you guys were in Louisiana. So what did he say that started that with you?
well, one thing, you went to school every day. If you didn't, he would bust your hide. There was no hooky. You didn't play no hooky. You had to go to school, period. And even back then, my dad had a high school education. I mean, that was outstanding for a black man in the South, in the deep South at that time, to have a high school education. So he felt liberated, mentally liberated somewhat, and he instilled in us that you got to go to school. You got to go to school. Don't you dare take a day off. I don't care if you had a cold snot running out of your chin down there. You went to school. And we went to McKinley High, which we lived in North Baton Rouge, and McKinley High was in South Baton Rouge, which is equivalent to about 4 miles, I guess. We walked to school every day. I mean, we walked to school every day. And we weren't the only ones. All the kids that lived in North Baton Rouge that was going to McKinley walked. We didn't have no transportation. There was school. There were buses, but nobody had any money. So to us, there was no buses. But that is the key. That is the key. As long as you don't instill an inferiority complex into your children, then they will not assume that position. The main thing is that they do is to keep them in school. Insist that they go to school. Because without an education, what can you do? even if you hit the lottery, you'd probably be broke the next week because you didn't have sense enough to keep it. Well, how to invest it.
So would you say that you were tougher or as tough as your father about school with your kids?
Well, I was tough. I was tough. My wife was tougher than I. Because when I was gone, she made sure they got out of there.
Your mom was.
Yeah. And you see what happened. What happened to your dad? He was a lover. Poor guy. And he had to get married in a hurry. I don't know
This
why.
was Yolanda? Or Yvonne?
Yvonne, yeah. And that's my mother in that picture I got in there. You know she died.
Yes.
Yeah. And that, you see, and that was the ending of his, he got out of my domain. In other words, he went out on his own too quickly. But Glenn was a very bright student. He was extremely bright.
I remember when we would be at home, Glenn would read the whole dictionary. And he just go, that's what he would do. Many nights he'd be sitting there just reading whatever encyclopedia, he'd just take them all, just read. So he was really a brilliant person.
Yeah, the only thing was that he was such a lover that he let it conquer him. Let his personal feelings overrule his better sense of judgment. But as far as astuteness is concerned, he had it. I mean, he was very bright. If he hadn't fallen in love so early, he might have gone on to become a great educator or an engineer or something, a scientist. Because I had a set of encyclopedias, botanical encyclopedias, complete set. And I don't think it's one of those books that he didn't read completely.
He read them all.
Yeah. Everybody be sleepy, he'd be sitting up there reading. So,
What about Michael?
Michael was more of a vigilante type dude.
He's always getting into something.
He wasn't too, well, he wasn't dumb, but he always bordered on the outskirts of radicalism. If there was some stuff going on over here, that's where he wanted to be, you know. Yeah.
What about Diane?
Diane, she's studious, rough. She was more of a tomboy. She'd get out there and play with those boys like she was one of them. You know, really climbing fences and all that stuff.
What about Jackie?
Oh, Jackie. Jackie
I
was...
was a Millie Mouse. I was the quiet one. Well, I wasn't quiet, but I
she
cried
was
all the
sneaky
time.
quiet.
Sneaky quiet? Too quiet?
She was sneaky quiet. Yeah. Jackie, she got started pretty early too. I guess the inspiration or the temptation or something was there. She met this Casanova from...
All right, we'll go on to the next one.
What was his name?
What was his
Never
name?
mind. We're going on to the next subject.
His last name was Bowie.
Oh.
That explains a lot right there.
Yeah, just that really upset the album part.
So you know, when I think about my own kids, I think about how one of them is more like me and one of them is more like their mother. How your kids' personalities growing up, you know, who was more like you and who was more like Grandma Pamela?
Well, none of them more like me. None of them more like me.
could have spent more time at home with the kids? Or were you pretty content with the life that you were?
Well, it was an economic situation. It wasn't a question of whether I wanted to or not. It wasn't that I was running from them. It was a matter of fact that that's where the money was.
Well, but you're a smart man. You could have found a job here locally, right?
Oh, I don't say I couldn't have found a job, but would it have been economically advantageous? You see, that's where the rubber meets the road. So, in your quest for economic security, you will do things against the grain to acquire that. And if that means going to Timbuktu, well, you just have to go to Timbuktu. You know, and the main thing is that as long as you have a wife, a good wife, that you can depend on, that she's going to maintain the household and not get carried away while you're gone, it works out very well. You see, each trip when you come back is like a new honeymoon.
I was looking at it.
Are you telling him to get lost? No, but that's what really happens in life. You don't always choose the location of your occupation. You try to choose the type of occupation that you're going to do, but where it's located, you have to be able to go to where that occupation is occurring if you intend to better yourself financially. See? You take the most successful entrepreneurs in business today, they move around. They don't stay one place too long. 4 or 5 years, $3 or $4 million a year, and they move over to another place. 4 or 5 years, 2 or 3 more million, and next thing you know, they're making 20, 30 million. It's always a step up. They're incrementing each time they move. Or at least the opportunities is elevated each time they move.
So I have a question. Going into the early 80s, I don't know much about before the early 80s. But going to the early 80s, you and Grandma Evelyn started to take a role of kind of being the central, the hub of the families as they all kind of met together, and all of the events were happening here, and everything kind of seemed to flow through here. So was that a role that you, who was the driving force behind that?
Mom.
You'll get your chance to do that.
We haven't done you yet. We're getting there.
I'll answer that. Mom was the force.
Well, what happened, Evelyn's family, there's a big family of them. And at that time, it was a pretty good sized family of us. And we sort of merged in together. And we lived in a central location in San Francisco where all of the relatives would come by our house. I mean, they had to pass our house to go wherever they were going. And so they would always stop. And they considered us to be the anchors of the group. And if we decided we wanted to do something, the whole family would do it. I mean, we would go like on a picnic and we'd have 50, 60, nothing but kin folks on her side of the family and my side of the family. We have a party. Large group. And I always had a house big enough to accommodate, that type of thing.
So did you take because one of the things that's always been interesting for me is that it seemed that you took a look at your children and your children's children, and you looked at each of their, kind of how their lives were developing, and you and Grandma took a pretty active role in reaching out in times of need, not just financially, but when you thought that there were challenges that were going on in the grandchildren's lives, and from a grandchild's perspective, we always looked at you and Grandmother as we knew that we could see that it was possible. Whereas when you looked at everybody that we were growing up with, all of our friends and people that were around us, they didn't even know that it was possible because things were so dire. But we had something to look forward to. Was that just by happenstance, or was that something that you guys made a concerted effort to, a role that you were trying to play?
No, well, we always paid attention to what was going on, and we knew our children, and we sort of knew when they were having difficulties, whether it be marriage or financial or what have you. And we would always try and come to their rescue, whatever it took. And we would always try to impress on them that you're the captain of your ship. Do something. Don't just sit there. Do something. Because this is where it's at. And don't let other people define you. You define who you are. Don't let Jackie define who you are. You define who you are. Because if you let others define who you are, you won't be too much in life. It'd be like this syllogistic logic, where you make a major premise and based on your major you make a minor, and it's logical, but not necessarily correct. So you define yourself. You see. A lot of people tell the children, well, you're not going to be anything, You never hear me say that. If they don't be nothing, it'll be because they decided it was their choice that they weren't going to be anything. Okay?
Got it. I think that's a good point. We have some follow-up items, but I think that